Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I hope you are doing well. It's been a while since I've done one of these lives, but I figured, considering the state of the market, it was appropriate for me to do one. And I would like to share my thoughts on what's happening and hopefully provide some clarity. I know that some people may be panicked, they may be upset, they may be afraid, and hopefully this live helps alleviate some of these emotions. I understand that investing is not always a smooth journey to the top. In fact, if it was, then a lot more people would be successful at it. The reason why people often fail or have suboptimal results is that precisely times like these throw them off of their plan, throw them off of the trajectory that they would have been on because they end up doing rash things that they later regret. So, hopefully, this live helps you avoid a similar outcome. With that being said, let's just take a lay of the land and see where we are in terms of stocks and cryptos. So the index that has pulled back the most, that has been punished the most by the market recently, is the Nasdaq. We went from around 26,000 to now 24,500 for the Nasdaq. Not a terrible drawdown, not something unprecedented, but certainly painful. If you look at the S&P, we went from close to 7,000 to now 6,800. Again, not something to really write home about. I mean, if you take it into context, if you zoom out, if you're not, hyper focused on the performance in the last 3 days, and you zoom out a bit, this is certainly a place that we've been before. The Dow Jones is pretty much flat. I mean, it's maybe peaked at 49.5. It's now 49.1. So nothing that would cause concern there. With regards to the Russell, we peaked at around 270. We're now 257. So I just want to put these, show you guys this yearly chart and put things really into context. Yes, we're not at our all-time highs, but we're not too far removed from it either. The VIX is at 20. Which is elevated compared to where we were a week ago, where we have been since the start of 2026, when we started close to 13 for the VIX. But at 20, we're certainly not in crisis mode. We've had higher readings as close as November, or as recent as November and October, and certainly nothing close to what we had in April of last year, where we peaked at north of 50 for the VIX. That's the volatility index for those who are unfamiliar. And that being said, the volatility index is up quite a bit today. But again, we're still not at levels that would, cause us to say this is something unprecedented. We've never seen something like this before. MicroStrategy and everything related to Bitcoin really has been absolutely, getting smashed. Down 14% today, MicroStrategy is, which is to be expected, considering that, they are a Bitcoin treasury company. Tesla is down 1%. Bitdeer, a Bitcoin miner, is down close to 7%. CLSK, CleanSpark, is down 12%. NVIDIA is in the green. TSM is in the green. And solar energy provider Enphase is down 7.5%. CRISPR is down close to 6%. So really, the blue chip stocks are faring decently today. It's the high beta stocks that are really getting punished. Silver and gold are down. So silver, after being north of 100, is now back down to 75. And as I this is a brutal chart. If you know bought near the top here. And as we said in our PIF community, we weren't going to be touching silver even after we were asked many times, uh, because I do believe that reversion to the mean is a very powerful thing. And even if it takes a while to manifest, eventually it will. And that's what we've experienced with gold. We also had a pretty strong drawback, so or drawdown. Peaking closer to 5,500. Now we're at 4,800, which is a lot for a store of value like gold that people run to in times of volatility. But it has exhibited a lot of volatility. Really, what we're seeing in the market is that all sort of previous correlations, all previous um, descriptions of assets are being challenged constantly. And speaking of volatility, and in the case of Bitcoin, really volatility in only one way, and that is downwards. Since basically we peaked in early October, we've just been sliding down the graph here with occasional breaks, but down has been the overall direction. Bitcoin down 10% today, or in the last 24 hours, I should say. 10% is a lot for Bitcoin in 24 hours. We're at 66,000. Ethereum is below 2,000. Solana is below 100. Now it's 80. Doge is below 10 cents. Everything is getting absolutely hammered. Pengu is now at 0.006. So everything is getting slaughtered. So with regards to crypto, it hasn't held up as well as stocks have, but that's to be expected because you can consider crypto to be sort of on the tail end of the risk curve, and so when things go down, the tail end ends up going down a lot more than the middle of the curve. And so that is to be expected. And so, what I want to emphasize in this live is sort of a bigger picture view of things so that we don't make the wrong decision. So, very bluntly, don't be stupid. It's important to put things in context. So, first of all, in terms of fear and greed with regards to crypto, we're at a reading of 11, which is extreme fear. And we've been at extreme fear territory 4 times now in the last 12 months. So we've been here in October, we've been here in the February, March, and April period of 2025 as well. And so, and in all cases, things eventually got better. Prices eventually rebounded. Now, I'm not saying this is going to be, a slingshot back to all-time highs. Certainly not. We may consolidate for a few months, but it is certainly true that these types of dips in sentiment have been experienced before, and we have recovered from them. So let's not forget that. And let's also remember that, when we are not overcome with emotion, we understand that the proper way to approach investing is to bias towards buying when people are fearful and bias towards selling when people are greedy or extremely greedy. And we're now in extreme fear territory. And so now, theory is put to the test. Do you actually Do you actually follow through on what you hold to be true in times when you're not emotional, or do you convince yourself that this time is different? Um, with regards to alts in crypto, basically everything, if you look at just the last month, almost everything has been halved, really. Render is down 44%. Virtuals is down 48.6%. Bonk is down 46%. Solana is down 40%, close to. Sui is down 49%. Pudgy Penguin's down 48.7%. So a lot of alts that were considered, top quality have basically halved in just the last month. So it's been a bloodbath, really, with regards to alts and crypto. And with regards to Bitcoin, there's only two times in the last 15 years, basically, where we've had 5 months in a row of negative performance for Bitcoin. So if you look in 2011, July, August, September, October, November, all red. And then we had December was positive 55% for Bitcoin. In 2018, we had 5 months of red, and then a 6 month of red in January of 2019, followed by 5 months of green. And now again, we have 5 months of consecutive, red performance if February ends up being a down month. And so, if history is any guide, and we do have February as a down month, then March could be extremely positive, or it could be slightly negative in the case of 2019, down another 8%. But then it goes on a 5 months win streak. It's possible that happens, not guaranteed, but typically history rhymes. And when you have in a 15-year span only 2 cases of 5 consecutive months of down performance, then when you have 5 consecutive months of down performance, I think, statistically, at least, probabilities of a green month are high. And when you look at the MVRV Z-Score, we are now in this green territory, which has historically, this looks at the market value versus realized value for Bitcoin historically. This has been a good time to buy. Certainly the upside seems to outweigh the downside at this point. That being said, I'm not saying that we're going to slingshot back into, all-time highs. We may, have a few months of consolidation, but I think, right now we're at 65,000 or 66,000. I think maybe, if I had to guess, and it's kind of a fool's errand to do it, but I'll do it for entertainment purposes at least. Probably low 60s, high 50s is where we bottom, if I had to guess. And maybe we chop there for a while before we start heading upwards again. That being said, I mean, long-term holders realized value is close to 50,000. So maybe we go down all the way to 50,000, but we're close. I mean, we're at 65 right now. The all-time high here was north of 125,000. So as I mentioned, I mean, even if we go to the realized price of long-term holders, we maybe have $15,000 more downward to go. And I'm talking here about the most probable cases. Of course, there is a possibility that we go to zero. But after 15 years, I think this asset going to zero is the probability of that is very small. Not never zero, but small. I think in all likelihood, history will rhyme, and eventually we will recover. And that scenario, which to me seems most likely, is one where the downside is at this point. If we're just looking at the all-time high for Bitcoin, the downside is maybe 1/5 what the upside is. So that being said, I would definitely, if you're interested in an asset like Bitcoin, which is very high beta, right? A lot of volatility. So if that's not your cup of tea, then I would definitely not advise buying it. And it's very important for you to be able to understand what really is your risk tolerance and your appetite for risk, and not really kid yourself about that, because a lot of people like to say that they have an appetite for risk, but then when volatility hits and it's not in their favor, um, they end up making irrational decisions, and their experience, their quality of life really deteriorates. And so it's something that you really have to be honest with yourself about. Are these like high beta names things that I even want to bother with, or should I just go with the less volatility, more sure thing, perhaps more limited upside, but more of a sure thing names? Bitcoin remains a very high beta asset, and it's not for the sort of faint of heart. So um, that's something that people really need to be honest with themselves about, as if this is appropriate for them or not. All right. So with that being said, if high beta names like Bitcoin are something that you think you can stomach and are worth the risk for you, then I do think that the the downside from here is limited compared to the upside. And with regards to sort of some, I guess, hopium that people are desperately looking for at this point. If we look at the PMI, the recent reading was actually very good, and so we gapped up from 58 to close to from 48 rather to 53, and it's the first time we've been above 50 since October of 2022. And typically, an expanding PMI correlates with a appreciating Bitcoin price, and you can see that in previous cases where the PMI was below 50, we were basically treading water with regards to Bitcoin. But then when the breakout above 50 happens, the price of Bitcoin tends to appreciate in a big way. And so I do believe that this correlation makes sense. We've seen other correlations just not hold, like the correlation between Bitcoin and gold, the correlation between Bitcoin and M2. Um, but I think that the one thing that may have been holding Bitcoin back is the fact that the PMI has basically been depressed since October of 2022. And perhaps the price appreciation that we saw in Bitcoin happened despite the fact that the PMI was in not good shape. And it happened because we had the ETFs, the Bitcoin ETFs. We have the positive regulations with regards to crypto. We had a sort of more friendly administration, a more crypto friendly administration. We had institutional investors dipping their toes into crypto. And so perhaps it was this that caused Bitcoin to appear as if we were in some sort of bull market. But in reality, perhaps we were not in a bull market. Perhaps it was, uh, simply a function of these things that I mentioned that caused Bitcoin to appear like we were. And now that the PMI uh, is above 50, and if we're able to maintain and build on this, then it's possible that we enter the bull market when people are, suspecting it the least, which is 2026. A lot of people are saying, "Oh no, actually, the 4-year cycle ended up, panning out exactly as was expected." But I think that may be an illusion. It may be these other things that ended up causing Bitcoin to act in the relatively healthy way that it has in 2025 and even in 2024. But then um, it was actually being held back from its true potential by the PMI being below 50. And now that it's above 50, perhaps it's able to break out in a much bigger way. I would not be surprised if that was, in fact, closer to the truth than those who harp on, the 4-year cycle and the fact that, oh, well, the calendar says it's been 4 years and therefore, Bitcoin should fall. That doesn't really make much sense to me. It makes a lot more sense to me that, the more dollars you have chasing a scarce asset, the price will go up. And right now, with manufacturing index improving, and with the probabilities for a rate cut being higher than the probabilities for a rate hike, and interest rates today being lower than they were a year ago, and therefore money is cheaper, and quantitative tightening ending, quantitative easing expected to start, or at least you could consider the fact that quantitative tightening stopped is one form of quantitative easing. All of those things impacting positively the price of Bitcoin makes a lot more sense to me than simply the price of Bitcoin reacting to the calendar reading a different date. And I do believe that perhaps some of the calendar impact is sort of self-fulfilling prophecy. But I think that can only last you for so long. Eventually, the physics of the matter are going to play out. And if you have an expanding money supply, you have an expanding economy, you have accelerating growth, and you have a scarce asset like Bitcoin, which has at this point a pretty solid history, then the price should go up. But if I know anything about the markets, it's that it typically behaves in ways that surprise investors. So we'll see to what extent this plays out. But I would not be surprised if what I'm saying is exactly true. Now, what we can do in this time is to think productively about what are the things that people may be down about that may actually benefit from the current dynamic. And one name that I've spoken about before on this channel, which occurs to me may do very well because of what is happening, is Bitdeer. Because Bitdeer has been growing the amount, and this is a track of the weekly update of Bitcoin output. Bitcoin has been growing the amount of Bitcoin that they mine every week in a big way. So if you look just 1 year ago, they were mining close to 30 Bitcoin per week. And as of last week, the most recent weekly update, they mined 156 Bitcoin per week. And so they are expanding their hash rate in a very big way. And in fact, if you look all the way here on the left, they've actually overtaken Mara with regards to total hash rate that is under their control. And hash rate refers to basically Bitcoin mining power. And so Bitdeer is now in the lead in terms of Bitcoin mining power. And all of these other, the smaller Bitcoin miners, they may end up dropping out of Bitcoin mining altogether, and this hash rate may end up going to zero the less and less it makes sense to mine Bitcoin. And therefore this allows, because in Bitcoin mining, one party's loss is another party's gain, because in a specified period of time, the same amount of Bitcoin is always mined. And so if other players are dropping out, the remaining players get a bigger and bigger piece of the pie. And so if this Bitcoin slump extends for a prolonged period, then a lot of these smaller, less efficient miners are going to end up dropping out. And the remaining winners in the space are going to have a bigger piece of the pie. When Bitcoin's price starts going up again, that's when they will be able to capitalize on that bigger portion of the pie that they've been able to seize during the downtime. So Bitdeer has positioned itself in a way to take full advantage of the dynamics that I just told. It may end up on the next leg up for Bitcoin, being by far the largest Bitcoin miner, publicly traded Bitcoin miner, and that should command a pretty generous valuation. Not to mention all the other stuff that it's working on. Obviously, it has 3 gigawatts of power capacity. 1.6 gigawatts of those 3 gigawatts are operational already. And when you listen to the CEO, it does seem like he's very serious about pivoting to AI and HPC that has historically higher margins than Bitcoin mining. And they also have their Bitcoin mining rig business, which is making some of the most efficient mining rigs on the market. And that technology may have additional use cases beyond Bitcoin mining. And so taken all together, I kind of like Bitdeer as a play here. Again, not for the faint of heart, very high beta, but it does seem like the surface area for luck here is pretty large. So at the end of this presentation, what I want to say is that I can't think of a single name that we've picked for ourselves for PIF wherein the thesis has changed because of the recent pullback in the market. The fact of the matter is that the probability of rate cuts still outweighs the probability of rate hikes. The fact of the matter is technology, specifically around AI and robotics, is creating incredible money-making opportunities. Whether it's in AI and robotics directly or through derivative plays such as energy, which is becoming more and more scarce. And this is going to have winners and losers, and the winners are going to do extremely well. And it's important here. Someone I care about deeply called me yesterday and said, "Hey, what do you still are you still bullish on Bitcoin? Do you still believe in Bitcoin after the pullback?" And my initial reaction is that it's very common during pullbacks for people to question their thesis about why they invested in a particular asset or a particular company, and oftentimes they bias themselves towards saying that their thesis was wrong. And what I would encourage is that during market pullbacks, I would encourage fighting, resisting the temptation to abandon your thesis because that's kind of where the mind goes naturally. And in a similar way, I would encourage people to question their thesis in times when prices going up, because the mind is biased towards confirming one's thesis when the price goes up. And I say that because um, you want to, if your mind is biased in a certain way, you have to move in the other way in order to end up with a sort of neutral stance. So you have to push back in the other way in order to have a neutral stance. So in order to take advantage of pullbacks and act on the theses that you had, you have to actively work against the temptation to question your thesis in order to take advantage of the pullback and pull the trigger on buying. And then when things are moving in your direction, you have to actively force yourself to question the thesis that is now being confirmed by the price action moving upwards. You have to force yourself to question that in order to have the courage to take profits when things are going up. And so that's just something that I want to encourage you to do. This is not to say that if something actually changed in the thesis that you shouldn't change your position, but it is important to recognize that a lot of voices on social media and in your head, I should say, a lot of voices will become a lot louder, doubting something when the price moves against it. And voices will become louder, confirming something, saying, I told you so, when the price goes higher. And you have to, in order to remain sort of neutral and rational, you have to resist both sets of voices. And so hopefully that made sense. And with that being said, let's go to questions. I'm sure there's a lot. So Salamat Rashad, nice to see you. Salam Sayyid. Walaikum salam. Assalamu alaikum. Would love your views and thoughts on Bitcoin. I think being mentioned in the Epstein files. Yeah, I saw. I mean, they were mentioned. So what? Who cares? What does that mean about Bitcoin? The guy was a moron. I think he was talking about Bitcoin founders. He wanted to meet with the Bitcoin founders, like he thought it was a startup of some sort. Yeah, so for someone who thinks he's part of a superior race, he was quite the idiot. Rashad says, thanks for the assurance, brother. Always appreciate your insight. Thanks, Rashad. It's my pleasure. Where do you see Bitcoin flowing? I actually think, as I mentioned, low 60s, which we're almost at right now, high 50s is where I would put it. So right now it's at 65.5. So I think we're closer to the bottom than certainly we are to the top. Salam alaikum. Isn't it time that you do a review about Definity and their vision? Definity? Who's Definity? Who the heck is that? Is this like an ad for something? All right. Naviz Haq says, you don't sound confident. Well, sorry. I'm just saying things as I see them. I cannot predict the future. الغيب لا يعلمه إلا الله. But I hope I was clear in what I think is most probable. What do you think about Oracle? Well, I wouldn't touch anything that Larry Ellison And that entire company seems not a good one, so wouldn't really touch it. If BTC drops to a low of 50 to 60K, how will this impact miners? Well, as I mentioned, I think that the weakest miners are the ones that are going to be pushed out first, and then the strongest miners will remain. And when they get out of the Bitcoin slump, the stronger miners will end up having a bigger piece of a more valuable pie. If you have limited funds, would you buy BTC or miners for the turnaround play? So here's what I would do. I'd probably buy BTC miners because, and especially something like Bitdeer, because, even if BTC slumps and it, remains there for an extended period of time, it's not its only shot on goal. It still has a pretty solid shot at high performance computing and AI that has very robust margins, and so it could still do well. Whereas with BTC, it's kind of binary. Either BTC does well or it doesn't. So there's like some diversification when you're buying a BTC miner like Bitdeer. Not financial advice. If we go into a recession, we are in big trouble because Kevin Warsh is hawkish. Well, I don't think he is necessarily hawkish. I think that he seems reasonable, to be honest, from what I've heard. He seems reasonable, so we'll see. Assalamu alaikum. The internet misses you. Thanks, Dr. Khalid. I appreciate it. Salamatic. Maybe bonds are going up in future because of Kevin Warsh, and stocks and Bitcoin are going down. I think that to some extent, the reason crypto and stocks are going down is because the PMI came in hot, like really hot. And so inflation has crept up. And yes, Kevin Warsh was a selection that I don't think anyone describes as dovish. And the as well as the Japanese bond situation. So a confluence of factors, as it always is. It's never just one thing. Confluence of factors caused the recent pullback. Finally, I'm live. Yes. Assalamu alaikum. Do you think some of this crypto drop is due to market longs being flushed out, causing a drop in price? Yeah, that's another thing that I want to say. Like, you have no excuse to panic if you're not leveraged. If you're not leveraged and you were doing things right and only investing money that you didn't need in the next 12 to 24 months, then you have no excuse to panic. Panic is for the leveraged investors who got greedy and are actually losing money. For people who hold high quality assets and haven't sold, they haven't lost any money. The investment thesis still holds. What we're looking at is just an opportunity to buy at a discount. And so, yeah, of course, the drops in crypto will always be exaggerated by the liquidations of levered positions on the way down. And similarly, when things go right and the price appreciates, that appreciation is also going to be exaggerated by all the leverage that comes in. And that's what we saw in silver. The big sort of spike, the blow off top that we had, that was because of leverage, and that's why it crashed down so hard. And that's also one of the reasons why I don't really think that we had a bull market, is because typically bull markets end with a blow off top, and we never got that in crypto. We never got anything close to a blow off top in crypto. And so that's just one more piece of evidence that I think, maybe we weren't in a bull market at all. Maybe we were in a bear market, but it was just being supported by all these, um, positive developments regarding crypto. If you look at, Bitcoin ETFs, the positive crypto regulation, friendly administration, institutional investors, those things were keeping crypto appearing like maybe it is in a bull market, but in fact it wasn't. And so perhaps the bull market, has really yet to start, and it may surprise a lot of people. Oh, thanks, brother. Thanks for reposting the stream. I really appreciate that. Uh, do we also have 3.5 conviction that Pudgy will reach its target price? I mean, I think that if you look at the Discord, they're basically the most active project you're going to get out there, and they're actually generating revenue, and they've kind of, one of the few crypto projects that have made it to the physical world. And so, if anything is going to succeed, it has to be something like Pudgy Penguins. And so, I think that if crypto rebounds and finds its footing, which probably will, then Pudgy will do very well, inshallah. Okay, you mentioned finding investment opportunities outside the US. Have you got your eyes on anything? It's funny you mentioned that. Um, yeah, I do. um, Perhaps I'll have more on this. The theory of Jeffrey Epstein being Satoshi has any merit? No. Like I said, the guy's I mean, I guess he must have been charming, or he must have had some networking abilities or something like that. But I don't think this guy is really that intelligent at all. In fact, he seemed kind of like a moron. But Satoshi, and certainly if you read the white paper for Bitcoin, um, seemed very high on the IQ ladder. And I should say, like, it seemed like he had an actual ethical framework that he was working in. So, no, I don't think there's any merit to that. أبو عمر جزاك الله خير وإياكم إن شاء الله أبو عمر. Qadir says, we do not see PIF buying any dip. Why? Well, we may start. We'll see. Oh boy, assalamu alaikum. Good to see you live. Thanks, brother. Appreciate it. We'll see if we have a extended bull run. Maybe I see you in the next 6 months. But no, inshallah, sooner than that. Do you think the gold and Bitcoin markets are being manipulated by large institutions? Actually, I know that's the case. That's not a if. It's a certainty. Some of the recent price movements feel very strange. Yeah, it's. I mean, derivatives galore in both. Does the thesis still hold for Solana and Solana-related assets? I still think Solana is the best technological solution if you want to do tokenized assets. And so, yes. Doge ETF did absolutely nothing for Doge's price. Do you believe Pengu ETF will happen? If so, when? And what do you think will be effective on Pengu price? Well, not really. I think there's. I think those questions are should be. At the end of the day, they're not what's going to make or break a certain project. These are things that sort of amplify what already exists. but they don't actually, cause the project to succeed. In fact, they're probably a byproduct of success more than anything. So, with regards to whether an ETF is going to happen to Pengu or not, I think a lot of it will depend on how Pengu performs, and I think a lot of that is going to depend on how the crypto overall performs. And as I mentioned, I think that generally speaking, I think that as trust in governments wanes and trust in fiat currencies wane, then programmatic solutions to, I guess you can call them utilities that people need, like storing of wealth. Programmatic solutions seem more and more needed and more in demand, and therefore the level of real scarcity that they have should actually increase. And so again, here biasing my thoughts towards confirming my thesis as opposed to questioning it during times of drawdowns. I think that the thesis for crypto is today stronger given what we know about fiat. And the king of cryptos still remains Bitcoin. And so I think that now one could argue, okay, tokenized gold is a solution. Now the difference there is that with tokenized gold versus Bitcoin is that with tokenized gold, you don't actually know if the gold exists. There's no assurance that actually there's something valuable behind the tokenized gold that you're buying. But with Bitcoin, Bitcoin itself is what is valuable. Bitcoin itself is the object of the trade, whereas a tokenized gold is it's a representation of something that is valuable, and therefore there's always the risk that that gold doesn't exist. If you'll recall, initially when this administration started, it was talking about auditing Fort Knox, and then which is where all the gold is held, or majority of the U.S. government is held, and then we didn't hear anything about that project, and all of a sudden it's silence, no updates. What happened? Where's the gold? Does anyone have we got the Epstein files. We didn't get the audit of Fort Knox. Where is the gold? Is there any gold? How much gold is there? So that remains a question. With Bitcoin, you don't have that. So just thinking about it, and I think about these things all the time, it does seem like the case for Bitcoin should be stronger today than a year ago, for example. Man, UpXE has been a true disaster. But it really, it's just a play on Solana, and it does seem like insiders are buying that stock. As you know, if you're a PIF member, I sold it at the end of 2025 for tax loss harvesting, but I don't have any intention of buying it back, just because the digital asset treasury space, I think, has become kind of a clown show at this point. And so I'm not in it anymore, but I do think that when Solana recovers, it should recover. But there's always the threat of additional dilution, and now they're talking about a lot of debt that they're going to raise. So it's not something that I'm really excited about. Do you think geopolitical uncertainty and events will affect the markets? Yeah, of course they do. Happy to see you after a while. Does AVAX still out of your consideration? Yeah, I wouldn't touch that. Yeah, please like the video. I forgot to say thanks, Rashad. I appreciate you reminding me. Is iShare Gold ETF? Yeah, iShare is BlackRock, so I will, try to avoid BlackRock. This is a good comment, and I appreciate you, brother. It's really nice of you. If we don't hear from you before Ramadan, then I pray for you and the PIF family enjoy a blessed Ramadan, and I request du'as from you for me and my family, inshallah, brother. Qadr, everything that you wish for happens and more, inshallah. Thank you all for tuning in. Hang in there, as I mentioned. I don't think it's, we've been here before, and this is really, the price, the volatility that we are enduring is the price of targeting outsized returns. Without this volatility, you don't earn the outsized returns. And so just keep that in mind and enjoy the rest of your day. Until next time, make sure to take care of yourself. Assalamu alaikum and peace be upon you all.